Hello everyone, AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink, and really excited about the products today, even though my video is the simplest use of them. There's going to be tons of inspiration as this is part of a blog hop, and I'm going to be using these over the next several months, the next several years, but let's just get right into it. So Waffle Flower's August release, the bulk of this release is revolving around back to basics. And they have designed these very unique, in my opinion, color swatch stamp sets. So this is the main color swatches set. There's so many uses. It's mind-blowing. I couldn't even begin with all of it. Hence me just starting at the very basic and simple for myself, but I'm going to keep expanding what I use it for. There's going to be tons of inspiration. There'll be videos and posts, and Waffle Flower has done printouts and charts and so many things. So, like I said, I did simple. I took the main cluster of swatch stamps here, and I only stamped part of it. I only needed 12 little rectangles, basically, and I stamped them onto watercolor paper. And then I took my little T-square ruler and I drew lines across this. Now, if you are at all familiar with watercolor, it is a good idea, one, to swatch everything. But two, with watercolor, when you swatch it, you do want a black line to paint over because that will show you how transparent or opaque a watercolor is. That's as far as I went with these. I didn't do anything fancy. I'm not going to do any fading or anything like that. I just wanted swatches. And I have these Prima Watercolor sets. I've had people asking me for the last couple of years if I was going to get into these, and I finally did. I got my hands on a few, so I barely used them. I've only used a couple of them, so I wanted to do just some very simple swatches. And I discovered that these fit in one of the new Waffle Flower dies, which I'll get into in a minute. But I figured if I stamped this small section, I would have the 12 openings for all of these watercolors. Then I did the lines like I showed, and then I just labeled along the top, and then on each one, all the Prima watercolors are numbered. The newer sets also have names. I didn't bother with that. I just wrote the numbers, and I just used a little Sharpie marker for that. And then all I did was just paint on the color. Like I said, I didn't do anything fancy. You could definitely, start with a darker concentration, fade it out, etc. As I was doing these, I was like, these would be really nice for Copics because the way they're sized and they have the little notches, they're technically 3 little sections. And I was like, these would be great. You could do like 3 color combos of Copics and, do light, medium, dark, etc. And I was like, so many things. Like, you get started and the brain starts going. But I kept it to just doing these. So I just used this is just a little Ranger brush, this little size 6 brush. I will have links to everything. I'll have links to the release, all that info. Like my blog post will have all the info as always. But I just painted on the color, and this just kind of gives me a visual of how these colors are going to look on watercolor paper. Which is really nice because especially with watercolor, how they look in the pan versus how they look once you add water and how they look on paper, it's completely different. So I went along and swatched all of the sets I have, which I have the classics, the tropicals, the complexion, and the decadent pies. And for some reason, I'm having a hard time sourcing the decadent pies now, which is, of course, I just get it. And it looks like it's being discontinued. I don't know. Maybe that's just on Simon's website. But the newest one is the complexion one, which I'm really liking. There are some repeats in the newest Prima sets. I am aware of that. I've seen some chatter online. So there are some repeats of colors in these ones, but I'm not too concerned about it. But again, I'm just keeping it with each set and the colors. So I went along and painted all of my little swatches here after I had labeled them and written the numbers on them. And then once everything is painted and dry, I am going to use the Swatch tag die. There is a separate little die set and there's a separate little mini set, and that one's going to get used a ton. My life has been crazy the last little bit, as usual. So I couldn't dive into doing the swatches, but people that know me also know that I have just a ton of different coloring mediums. So hence me saying I'm going to be working just bit by bit using these swatch stamps and swatching out all my colors and having things more organized. I really, really am excited about these stamp sets, and just being able to have a method and a system that's going to be consistent and that's going to work. That excites me. So yeah, that's the stamp, the swatch stamp alone, which I think people are going to go nuts over. And then this awesome little swatch tag die, which I discovered this set of 12 little swatches would fit perfectly on it. So that's what I used. And not only are they just, so now I've got this like ATC size little swatches of colors. They will fit in the Prima cases, which is great. Or I could keep them out and, hook them all together. Or I'm thinking maybe of doing a second set. So I'll have one for each inside the little tin and then one separate. Because just another FYI, the little swatch papers that come in the Prima sets are crap. Most are. Like, I have a more expensive watercolor set, and the little swatch paper that came with it, again, it was crap, like garbage. You want to put your swatches on the type of paper and watercolor paper that you're actually going to use. So, anywho. Oh, and I had done everything in VersaFine ONYX black ink, which is fabulous for watercoloring. So I did my little swatches, and like I said, just kept it simple. And then while I had the stamp set out, the whole time I was doing those swatches, while my mind's going, a million directions. But I was also thinking, I was like, ooh, it'd be kind of fun to make a card using this large stamp. So why not? So that's what I did. I stamped onto watercolor paper with the VersaFine ONYX black ink, which is awesome for watercolor because it is waterproof. It doesn't smear, anything like that. And then after I'd stamped it, I just took kind of a rainbow of colors using the Classics Prima palette and messily painted it across that. Did not stay inside the lines. I went messy. I liked how that looked. And then after it was dry, I die cut it with the largest of the Honeybee A2 Nesting Rectangles 1, which is A2 sized. So that's just another FYI, just to show you how that swatch will fit on an A2 size. If you wanted to do your swatching and stamping and storing on A2 sized paper, you can fit technically, I think, 6. So if you stamped and then stamped half a row, or like half the stamp, so 2 more rows, you could fit 36 on a piece of A2 sized cardstock. So again, my brain was just like, oh, but anyway, I'm getting sidetracked even in my own voiceover. So I die cut it with that, and then I stamped images from the Little Painters stamp set that I just love the little characters in it, but I also love the brushes and everything. So I stamped the brushes on this lower portion because it was all open, and I stamped one of the little kind of like splatter stamps or, blobs of paint stamps. And I also included one of the little mice because it was just cute, and, he fit in the corner there. He's just kind of peeking in. So stamp that and then use the same watercolors just to quickly paint these in very simply. And then, of course, I had to add some, messy color on the ends of all the brushes just to tie it all together. So just went along, painted everything really, really easily, let that dry. For my sentiment, I'm using the Waffle Flower Rainbows stamp set because, again, everything was just coming together with this. So it says, create your own rainbow. And I'm using just black cardstock here with my anti-static powder tool, and then stamping the sentiment with clear embossing ink, and then I'm going to heat emboss it with detail white embossing powder. So sprinkle that on over the sentiment, tap off the excess, and then melt that with my heat tool. And then while I had my stamp platform out, I also had stamped the inside of my card base, and I stamped there's 2 mice in that set, and there's also other little critters, but I stamped those in the corner because they're cute. And my card base isn't watercolor paper, but I've done this a lot of times. You can still paint with watercolor on non-watercolor paper. You just try not to use too much water and not overwork the paper. So I just lightly painted on the gray on the little mice and painted in their ears just to add a little bit of color, and kept it very simple, and it was good to go. So I did that for the base, and then to adhere my watercolor paper to my card, I just coated the back of this with my Xyron Mega Runner. And then I'm going to pop that onto my card front. And like I said, that die was A2 size, so this completely covers an A2 card base. And then my sentiment, I'm going to trim it down with my paper trimmer, just kind of using the little wire guide there to make sure that I get this trimmed down to the size I want. And then once I've got this trimmed off with my paper trimmer, I'm going to pull out my detail cutting scissors, and I'm going to cut just a little notch on the one end. So you just cut down, or like a little flag end. So you just cut down the center with your scissors, and then you meet each corner with the end of that little notch you cut, and then you got perfect little flag ends on that. So I did that and then added just a little bit of foam tape, and I'm going to pop that onto my card, and there's a final bit of embellishment because you have to add bling to everything. You know, I can't not. I pulled out some fun rainbow sparkle mix bling from Lucy's cards here and just kind of arranged them very randomly, but in similar colors. So the red on the red, yellow on yellow, etc. And I'm just going to glue those into place with little dabs of Gina K Connect glue and my jewel picker to press them into place. And that's going to finish off this card. So, like I've said in the video, this is part of a blog hop. I'm super excited. I've seen some sneak peeks and different things, but I'm really excited to see and get ideas from what everyone else is using these swatch stamps for. There's also the color wheel one, which I'm so excited. There's going to be more videos coming from me, from other people. This is really exciting and really fun. I'll have a link to the release, link to the blog hop people. There's giveaways. It's exciting. So definitely check out my blog post. It'll be linked directly below this video, as well as a supply list, etc. And yeah, check that out below if you're interested. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you very soon in the next video. Bye!